Well, hello and welcome to the Irish Independence League of Ireland preview video, joined today by Dan McDonnell to look ahead to 5 games this Friday night. Dan, the first Friday night we have 5 games. Fingers crossed our preview video will still be in date by the time we actually get to Friday night with all the postponements the last couple of weeks. 5 big games to look forward to. The first Louth derby of the year, Derry against Bohs, Shells hosting Galway as well, but I might start with the Dublin derby. Shamrock Rovers against St. Pat's. Obviously, there'll be a lot of eyes on Jake Mulraney facing his former club for the first time this season. Obviously, we're in this weird situation now where it is the start of round 3 and the champions have yet to play a game with how crazy the weather's been the last couple of weeks. So, and St. Pat's, of course, had their game called off last week too. So it's 2 teams raring to go and lay down a marker and all the cliches you want to.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, who would have thought at the beginning of the year that we'd be debating Shamrock Rovers having the longest pre-season preparation of all time, when the story was meant to be their curtailed pre-season preparation. Like, they came in later than anyone else. They came in a little bit later than Shells, even though they both finished their European campaign at the same time. And there was an element of, I think they had a couple of sort of, very hurried schedule of a couple of friendlies. And now they're in this kind of weird scenario where, now obviously I'm sure they would have managed their training in particular ways, so it's not quite a straightforward thing. I'm sure it's frustrating still to have games called off.
They had a friendly in between as
games
well,
called off in the day, and they had they were able to play a game after the first game was called off, I think, and so on. But I guess there's 2 sides to it. I mean, it'll give them it's given them more time to sort of maybe find their rhythm and with some, and they did have that President's Cup game, of course, but a little bit more time to find their rhythm, although they haven't had a huge turnover, it must be said, in terms of bodies. But I guess the flip side is that they are going to have some Monday games coming up. I mean, they have a double header this week, all going to plan. I mean, everything is with a massive asterisk here with the weather, that they are due to play 2 games in Tallaght, with the Dundalk game on Monday. So their schedule is going to be tight. They've got that Shells game coming up on a Monday in maybe March the 9th. So it's going to be busy for them. But Pats, I suppose, like after the opening match, I feel like they wouldn't have minded another go, because they finished the game in the Aviva Purdy. I don't think they were too bad for the opening 30 minutes or so. But it is one of these things. We have the early season rust. You want to get it out of the way and go into your next game, and that was called off. So obviously, Pats have had some difficult times in Tallaght more recently. Like actually, I can remember vividly Jake Mulraney scoring big goals for Pats
2024,
there. But they got pulled apart in Tallaght last season, probably one of the most worrying nights under Stephen Kenny.
4-0 in May, wasn't it?
And they could have sort of driven a car through the defence. They were very, very open in that game. Clearly, Pats have looked like they're going to change their approach tactically this year to be a bit more solid, to be a little bit better off the ball. And this is, I suppose, in that respect, it's a good test for them to go again away to Tallaght. Not dissimilar, to an Aviva game where you're going to sort of a bigger venue, and you're sort of thinking, okay, let's try this new system and see if they can be a little bit harder to beat. Although I still feel with Rovers, and I think it was visible with the Derry match as well, that quite often the teams who have the most success against Rovers in Tallaght are ones who are a little bit bolder sometimes, who try and engage their back 3, and Josh Thomas caused them all sorts of problems in that President's Cup game. And that back 3 at Rovers, the Lopez, Cleary, Grace axis, like they had a few injuries on the run-in last year. So you want to be, so it's sort of a mixed thing here, because you want to be asking questions of them. You want to go there and be brave in how you attack. But equally, I feel the Pats, you can hear what Stephen Kenny has said, they want to be a bit more solid this year. And I guess they have that scarring reference point from Tallaght last year as one. I know they did win the last meeting between the sides in Richmond, but look, Rovers were sort of in junk time of having won the league at that stage. It was, Pico Lopez arrived, missed that game with the birth of his baby that day and stuff. So, I don't think you read too much into that. I think it's probably the Tallaght games from last year that might be in the Pat's mind going there.
Just briefly, there'll be a lot of eyes on Jake Mulraney coming into this game. One of the big stories, the winter transfer window really leaving St. Pat's for Shamrock Rovers. He was electric in 2024. He was brilliant on the wing, made such an impact for Pats, and especially in that European run. I remember speaking to him when I was in Istanbul for the playoff. Didn't work out from last year. a lot of Pats fans be in agreement that it didn't hit his levels at all. Frustrations with end product. Is there pressure on him this year to produce in his new chapter at Tallaght?
Well, like, he was let go ultimately by Pats. Like, there is pressure, but I think Rovers have taken him as a bit of a project. Like, it's almost like a bit of a Danny Grant situation, where you're taking a player who, like, you know, he was offered around to other clubs. It's not a situation that Rovers went there and you know, assertively like took him out of there. Like, the power was with Pats to keep him if they wanted to do that. And I know Darren Nugent has effectively gone the other way. It wasn't put down as a sort of a swap, but I mean, that is basically, you know, an element to what's happened with it. I mean, there is pressure with him in the context that, like, what's he going to do with this chapter of his career? And Rovers have decided we think we can rehabilitate this player and make him more consistent, because he was inconsistent. We've seen him being very good, and equally Pats fans have seen him be very bad or just not deliver. And it is a question that, does the Rovers environment perk him up again? I mean, this is a guy who's played at a good level in his career. On his good days can be very good. There is pressure, but I mean, the thing is, like, I don't think all the creative responsibility at Rovers is falling on his shoulders. That is maybe the advantage there, that there's a lot of players around them who can take the lead as well too. And he looks like he might be one of the number 10s there, as opposed to maybe being a wing back, just based on some of the pre-season, the President's Cup. We'll see if that changes over time.
Big Dublin derby to look forward to. We'll move from Tallaght to Oriel Park, Dan, the first Louth derby of the season, and of course the first since the end of 2024. I know in the pre-season predictions, 4 out of 5 of us, I think, tipped Dundalk for relegation. But to be fair, Ciarán Culduff's men really impressive against Derry last week, coming away with a point and frustrated not to take all 3. I know Ciarán Culduff was speaking this week about how, you know, there's 24 Dublin derbies across the season, where there's only 4 Louth derbies, so it's a really special fixture for both clubs.
Yeah, and I think he described it as the biggest game in the league. I want to be clear, I was the 1 in 5 who said no.
Full disclosure.
So I mean, I was watching this show last week, and I think you were like, most of us have tipped Dundalk for relegation. I was like, hang on here, just hang on here for a minute, be careful. I do think they will stay up. I think I was writing a bit about this week. I think there is no doubt, even a little thing like being able to sign Tyreek Wilson from Shells, that's Conor Kearns has gone from Shells. There's no doubt there's a geographical advantage, and probably both of these clubs have benefited from it. I know that Drogheda, like, they still have a quite modest budget, but even still, like, someone like Brandon Kavanagh, I'm sure, is attractive to some of the club. I'm sure the likes of, you know, Galway, Sligo Rovers, Waterford would always be interested in Brandon Kavanagh. It helps. Dundalk with, like, Cornwall, Keith Buckley, Conor Kearns, Tyreek Wilson, they're able to sort of sign a certain type of experienced player that it's harder for the clubs out west to do. And I think they just have a nice balance in their squad, Dundalk, between that experience and the younger players. They could have won in Derry. I mean, for all the experience, I mean, Rob Cornwall was guilty of a really bad mistake, an error of judgment, and was rightly punished, in my opinion. They gave away a penalty, but there was glimpses in that game, you know, with the experience of Horgan, the quick throw for the second goal. But players like a Ruby as well, who have a point to prove. Owen Kenny, Stephen's son, with that goal. So, yeah, I have a feeling that they'll be okay across the season. Big advantage they have as well is now the Oriel pitch has been relayed. It does appear it's going to be a proper surface now. It does appear there will be floodlights, so it's now visible from like miles away, which is a nice, refreshing novelty. So a nicer venue maybe to visit for opposing teams, but still it is a place where there's a nice demand, and that's probably what they have in common with Drogheda. Not pleasant places to visit, and they genuinely use their home advantage across the season. So it's a good test for both these teams. I mean, Drogheda just did what they sort of officially, I know you were there last week, they got the job done early against Waterford. I think, from my understanding, is they were a little bit, one of their motivations last week was that there was some comments from John Mahon from Waterford in the lead up to the game about Drogheda being a long ball
side. You know what you're going to expect on their website.
I think there was a little bit of a tweak between what appeared initially and what appeared on a sort of a social grab. I think it wasn't missed by Drogheda. I don't know if Ciarán Culduff and his team have said anything this week that's going to fall into that trap. But it will be. That's the game I'm going to on Friday, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to a nice contest. But it is it's a sort of a tricky one to have a definitive opinion about, because you do resort to stereotypes sometimes talking about Drogheda. But I suppose, like, you know, I think that this Dundalk team have a sort of a cuteness about them too, in terms of like some of the experienced players they have. So I'm not sure if it'll be like a football classic, but I think it'll be a really good contest.
But a big loud derby ahead in Oriel Park, and Dan might move on Derry against Bows at the Brandywell.
A game that will also go ahead.
A game that will also go ahead with the two Astros. I was going to say, at least those are two games that by the time Friday night comes out, the preview won't be out of date, whichever way the weather goes. Derry obviously battling, coming back from behind to get a result for the second game in a row. Obviously, it's their third home game out of the first four they have of the season, hosting Bows, who, you know, there was a couple of little question marks about them in the Aviva. Yes, they had the big Conor Parsons chance against Pats in the second half. A couple of question marks over them going to Derry, and they blew them out of the water 4-0.
To Sligo,
sorry, to Sligo, Colin Whelan hat-trick, his third hat-trick in Bows colours. It's difficult to see how the way this is going to go. Bohemians is such a good start against Sligo, and obviously the Brandywell is a different proposition, but you just feel that if Bows get the upper hand, make a strong start, that nervous energy might go around the Brandywell.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Like, and like Bows definitely full of confidence. They flipped it a bit. They obviously started two strikers last week, two sort of natural strikers, and they scored in the second minute as well, which definitely helps. Sometimes Bows can end up, and they had that experience even against Sligo Rovers a couple of times last year in the Cup, where they get frustrated, and I think maybe that early goal takes a little bit of the pressure off them, and then like Colin Whelan has it in him, and there's a combination of Bows being very good and also Sligo Rovers defending very poorly. But yeah, Derry is just difficult. I mean, there's no doubt that they probably are using more new signings than a lot of other teams, and they are trying to do a lot. You know, sort of 6 new players, and they just don't look like a team that are fully sure of their identity really at the moment, and they're mixing things up, and then they have that pressure of knowing that they need to get these home results while they can. And I've been strong on that. I think I probably said it on the first show. Their vibes are going to be dictated by the first 4 games. I still do believe that, but equally, you know, it mightn't be the worst thing for them to get on the road as well too, and avoid that nervous energy that definitely will be there if they start slowly. They have an okay record against Bows. Like, they definitely, I mean, Michael Duffy just seems to always like dominate this fixture. But I feel like Tiernan Lynch is still, you still feel like on Friday it's like, okay, like last week they had Carl Winchester a right back. They're still figuring out what they are. Now they've had a full week to work on it. They need to be better than they were against Dundalk, or they're going to. This could be a tough Friday night for them.
Big one at the Brandywell, Dan. Shelbourne against Galway. I know that's the game Aidan Fitzmaurice is going to. Shelbourne, obviously, one of the teams suffering the postponements last week. Galway having a game called off as well. It just feels like, from a Galway perspective, after that kind of nightmare result in the first game of the season, the conceding in the last minute to Drogheda, they could really do with a result on the road here. But I think we've both said on this show, we really like Shelbourne's squad this year, the strength and depth, the new signings. I'm sure the likes of Lundgren and Freitas will want to be making an impact in their first home game of the season. And of course, it's Joey O'Brien's birthday this week, so he'll hoping to get 3 points as a birthday present.
Yeah, it's such a cliche, Seán. It's like, thank God you're not doing that report. Yeah, like, I think. Yeah, I kind of wonder though, like a home game against Galway, is that the game where you're necessarily going to throw some of the players that are new to the league into it? And we've seen, you know, he wasn't necessarily chucking them in Waterford, the opening game of the season. So,
sorry, but then on the other hand, Jerry Ryan speaking pre-season kind of praised Freitas's physical capabilities and said, no, he's not the player to come in from the Portuguese league and get
yeah, no, I take your point, but I think it's more a case of, I feel, I don't know, is it a case of just wanted to get some points on the board and just to, you know, to have a bit more comfort and to introduce players in phases rather than, and we've spoken about Derry who've like chucked their new signings in there. I kind of wonder for the first home game, do you still want to have an element of the tried and trusted? But yeah, no, I think Shells just need to they just need to be efficient in games where they have a lot of the ball. which has been a big problem for them in the last year. It hurt them a lot. They just need to become a little bit more clinical in these games. Galway, I mean, they are the team that I have tipped to go down. Now, by all accounts, they played well against Drogheda. You know, if you go off XG, sorry Martin O'Neill or whoever, but they could have won that game, and not just a missed penalty. But you still feel that Shells can go and Joey O'Brien, I'm sure Joey O'Brien will probably face comments on questions afterwards about the political situation in Ireland and Israel. We may have a situation where everyone in Irish football is quoted on this before the FEI executives, and I'm sure Joey O'Brien will probably have his say on Friday.
The last game to look forward to on Friday night, Waterford against Sligo Rovers. Dan, two teams coming into this off the back of really disappointing results. Sligo losing 4-0 to Bohs, as I mentioned. Waterford losing 2-0 to Drogheda. Obviously, especially with the postponements the last couple of weeks as well, it's just two teams coming into this really want to pick up their first win of the season each. Yeah,
it's a nasty game, this, because yeah, I mean,
a nasty game.
It's a nasty because I feel like for both of them, like whoever loses this is going to be feeling
even worse,
feeling bad, you know. Because I know, like you referenced the postponements, but like it hasn't been an issue like in terms of Waterford, you know. Like they've played twice and they've had two really bad first halves, and you know their fans will look at this game and think, well, okay, bad start to the season, but you have to beat these because they'll view Sligo Rovers in that context. So you know, in that context, I mean, in Sligo Rovers, but they've played two games as well. So
and Paul Ross is like that close to getting a result up in Derry.
Play well in Derry, yeah. Look, like, I mean, again, they look to have a sort of a clear identity in Derry, and we know when they are good, you know, they have O'Kane and they have Fitzgerald raiding from left back, and they've lost Patrick McLean, and they, you know, in terms of maybe like Shane Blaney was meant to be a replacement, he's not 100% fit. There was definitely, you know, a softness there in the goals they conceded last week. But yeah, it's just, I feel for both of these managers, it's just, you don't want to be sitting there, you know, with a sort of in Waterford's case, as much as they came back and got a result against Shells, and that definitely helped, but you'd still be a little bit alarmed by how they started that game and Drogheda last week. And yeah, just if you're a new manager, you want to get the punters on board. Yeah, you need a performance. You need a performance from Waterford tomorrow in particular.
Well, 5 big games to look forward to this Friday night. We'll have live coverage on Friday evening, live from Tallaght Stadium, Tolka Park and Oriel Park. And we'll be back with our post-match review video on Friday night too. You can follow that and all the rest on the Irish Independent.